DND number 7, Warriors in Jesus' Name, Chapter 14. It'd been a week since Mark had shown up at her door because he, quote, had to come and make sure she was okay, end quote. A week since Joey had walked down the steps at the municipal courthouse and been blown away by some crazy guy. A man, Bella had recently learned, who had beat up his wife. Would the madness never end? Mark had asked her to keep hope alive. He told her he had a plan and that he would need some time. About a week, he'd said. Hold on, and they'd be able to overturn Judge Latham's order of custody. Of course, she couldn't hold him to that week, not with Joey being shot. Still, she wondered just how much longer it would be. Gordon had begun to revert to his old ways. She'd known he would, but but she hadn't expected it so soon. It seemed ever since the shooting incident he'd been more and more agitated. She admitted she was getting a little nervous. She'd lost some of her aplomb. Some of the reason for that is the little suspicion that had crept into her mind. Gordon had been so pleased about Joey's circumstance, and yet so discomposed since then, that she'd begun to suspect that he'd had a hand in it. Did he hire someone to shoot Joey? And are the authorities onto him, and that's why he's acting so strange? All weekend and Monday, Gordon had yelled at her for every little thing. She tried to steer clear, but it seemed he was over her shoulder every time she looked. He had that look in his eyes like he needed to hit something. Last night, she tried to get some of her clothing out of the dresser in his room. She hadn't even thought about moving her things with everything else going on, and she wished now that she had. Because when he caught her in his room, he took that to mean that she was willing and able, and she was most definitely not. She ran her hands over her arms as she thought about what almost happened on Monday. He'd been drinking, and he'd pulled her down onto the bed, and she'd wrestled away, but he'd come after her, and she'd yelled at him, and he'd yelled back and grabbed her, and she'd tried to get away, but he was too strong. It was Logan coming in that had saved her. He'd opened the door to the bedroom and simply said, "Dad, leave her alone, please." It had been enough to stop him. That time. Who knows what the future held? She thought about calling Mark today and ask him if there had been any progress. But she didn't want to put any pressure on him, and she didn't want him to know that things were becoming challenging on her end. He was a good man, and she trusted him. He'd said he'd get her out, and he would. She missed him terribly, though. Getting that one taste of what it would be like to have him in her life was like giving one drop of water to someone dying of thirst. She just had to get through. She looked over the dining room table to be sure everything was as it should be. She didn't want to rile Gordon now that she was so close to getting out. Dinner was in the oven. She'd made hors d'oeuvres and had the makings for martinis ready, and she glanced at the clock. Normally, it being Wednesday, she and Logan would be leaving for their martial arts class, and Gordon would be going out to the club or playing a round of golf. This time, though, he'd refused to allow them to go. And when she suggested that he allow at least Logan to continue to participate, he'd had a tirade. "How can you even think I would allow you and Logan to go back to martial arts classes?" he'd said. "But Logan is doing so well," she'd argued. He'd grabbed her by the arm and pulled her close. "I don't care how well he's doing. My son is not going to learn another thing from one of those cocky kinos. Too bad a stray bullet didn't hit your instructor." Bella sighed as she remembered the vehemence with which he'd spoken. At least he hadn't gone back on his word to give Logan some time to be with friends. Logan had used his newfound freedom to join the flag football team since he was too late to join the regular middle school team. They met at the school 3 days a week. And today, Logan had come home, eaten a snack, and ridden his bike back up to the school. He wouldn't be home until 5:30. Bella smiled as she thought about her very grown-up son. She'd noticed that he'd stayed on the phone a lot lately. At first, she thought it might be a girlfriend. As she'd finally asked him, and he told her it was JoJo and Eric. That was even better. She was glad that they were staying friends. She jumped when she heard the garage door opening. Drawing a deep breath, she prepared for whatever was to come. Gordon came in the door with a scowl on his face. What are you smiling about like some village idiot? He barked. Bella tried not to let him get to her. I was just trying to offer you a pleasant greeting. Did you have a bad day? He looked at her suspiciously. I had a very bad day, and I'm still having to pick up the slack for the moron who left the firm. You'd think one of the other partners would help out, but the fat cats have gotten lazy. I swear if I have to spend one more day in court with that freaking Judge Mayfield who just can't stop singing the praises of your little boyfriend, I just might go crazy. My boyfriend? You know exactly who I'm talking about. That cocky Mark Adams. Master Mark, as you and Logan call him. Bella kept her head down. I told you, it's not like that. So you said. Now take my briefcase to my office and get me my drink. Of course, she muttered. She couldn't keep her hands from shaking as she measured the gin into the shaker. She knew she was falling back into the cycle, but she didn't know how to stop it. She finished the drink and picked up the tray of appetizers and headed into the den where he was lying on the Chase lounge watching the news. Handing him the glass, she carefully set the tray down on the coffee table. I thought you might like some appetizers. He grunted, sat up and reached for one, eyeing her as he did. Are you thinking about going somewhere? Her brow furrowed. No. Why are you so dressed up? I'm not. Compared to how you've been looking, you are. Well, I'm feeling a little better, so I guess I took a little more time with my appearance today. His eyes traveled over her. Can't even tell you had a bruise on your face anymore. She touched her own cheek. It's amazing how fast the human body can heal. He reached out and grabbed the hem of the skirt she wore and tugged until she had no choice but to move toward him, and once she was close enough, he placed his hand on her leg. She swallowed hard and tried for the stern face she thought she'd perfected until now. Gordon, what do you think you're doing? You know exactly what I'm doing. It's time you and me made amends. We have made amends. We're living in the same house amiably, taking care of our son. I'm talking about you and me. I have to admit, not being able to have you makes me appreciate you. You're actually very pretty in a simple sort of way. I want you, Bella, and I think you want me too, or you wouldn't be getting all dressed up and flaunting yourself. I'm not flaunting myself. He let go of her to grab more hors d'oeuvres, and she immediately stepped away. Dinner is ready whenever you are. She quickly left the room. She busied herself in the kitchen while she tried to calm herself. Finishing up the last-minute details, she spooned butter onto the steamed broccoli, and when she looked up, she was surprised to find Gordon leaning against the door jamb between the dining room and kitchen, watching her. Her hands began to shake again, and the kitchen door burst open and Logan came in. Hi, Mom. He immediately noticed his father standing in the dining room. Dad, he said quietly. Hi, Logan, Bella said cheerfully. Dinner's ready. Okay, I'll go wash and be right down. He looked over at his father and back at his mom before he took the stairs 2 at a time. Bella drew a steadying breath. Hopefully, with Logan home, Gordon will get out of his amorous mood. Logan hurried back down the steps and rushed into the kitchen. His father had already taken a seat at the dining room table. Is there anything I can help with, Mom? Just grab that pitcher of water, and that will be it, she said softly. He did as instructed and poured water for his father before he set the pitcher on the table. Bella placed the pasta bowl containing shrimp marinara on Gordon's left and the salad bowl on his right. The bread was already on the table. Gordon smiled and breathed deeply. This smells delicious. Both Logan and Bella stilled. Bella had been placing her napkin in her lap. Her eyes met Gordon's. Logan had been taking his seat. He looked from his father to his mother and back again. Swallowing, Bella smoothed her napkin and took some bread from the basket. Her hand shook as she placed the bread on her plate. She knew Gordon would never compliment dinner like that. So he hadn't rid himself of the notion that he and she should make amends. He complimented the meal as his idea of foreplay. He had certain intentions in his mind, and there was nothing she was going to be able to do to stop him. If she tried, it would become something much worse. And Logan would try to intervene again. Only this time, Gordon wouldn't be surprised by that. He'd be ready, and who knew what would happen? Would he hurt his own son? Bella tried to act normal. She tried to eat. Gordon ate quietly while his eyes constantly roamed over her, and Logan obviously didn't realize what was going on, but he knew something was up. When the meal was finally drawing to an end, Bella stood. "I've made a delicious blonde brownie for dessert," she announced. "Sit down, Bella. You don't need to wait on Logan like he's some kind of king." But, but don't you want any dessert?" "Oh, I do, and it's about time I got some." Bella swallowed hard. "Gordon, please don't." "Logan, go in the kitchen and get yourself some dessert and eat it in your room." Logan looked back and forth between his parents, trying to figure out what was going on. "Now!" He looked to his mother, and she nodded at him. Slowly, Logan left the table, carrying his dishes. "Now then, like I said earlier, Bella, it's time for you and I to make amends. Gordon, I know you don't love me, and I don't love you. I'm telling you no, plain and simple. My body is mine, and I don't want to have sex with you." He plastered a smile on his face. "Well, let's just talk about that a moment. I'm allowing you to live in my house so that you can be close to your son. I have to deal with seeing you flaunt yourself every day, every night. I'm a red-blooded, virile man, Bella. You certainly can't expect me to live with you and not be able to make love to my wife." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not making love, Gordon. You don't love me, and I do expect it. I expect to be able to tell you no, and you abide by that." "Well, that's not going to happen, Bella. I've taken all I'm going to take from you and your little boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend." "Well, I don't believe you, Bella." He stood, moved around behind her, placed his hands on her shoulders. "We can do this one of two ways. You can stand up and walk up those stairs with me, or I can drag you up there." "I'll never go with you willingly. Never." "Well, that's fine by me," he said agreeably. "You know I like it rough." A tear ran over her cheek. "Please don't do this, Gordon." "Ah, the sniveling little crybaby is back." He moved his hands over her shoulders, and she placed her hands on his to stop him. "I won't let you do this. Put your hands by your side, or I start yelling, and I guarantee your little boy will come running." Defeat settling in, her eyes closed as she moved her hands from his. "Mom," Logan said, poking his head in from the kitchen. Bella gasped. "Logan, go upstairs like I told you," Gordon said sharply. "Mom, what's going on?" Gordon whirled toward his son. "Logan, go upstairs," Bella screamed. "Just go. Now. Please." He stood for a moment, confusion and indecision evident on his face. "Please, Logan," Bella cried softly. "Go. Go in your room and close the door and don't come out no matter what." He turned and ran upstairs. Bella stood, ready to fight. Gordon grabbed her by the hair and twisted her arm behind her back and turned her around and forced her up the stairs. She struggled against his strength, but it was too much. It felt as if her arm would break. When he got her to the room, she grabbed the doorknob with her free hand and wouldn't let go, but he jerked her hard, pulled her inside, and slammed the door. "I hate you," Bella hissed at him. "One day you'll pay for this. I swear you will." He laughed at her. Logan sat on the floor in his room, his back against the door, his hands covering his ears. What was he supposed to do? What? His mom told him to stay in his room no matter what. Why? Because she didn't want his help? Because she was worried that he would get hurt? His father was forcing his mom. That much he understood. He heard muffled cries. He heard thumps and bumps. He heard grunts and groans. What was he supposed to do? What would Jojo and Eric do? What would Master Mark want him to do? He told him once to obey his mother no matter what. Is that what he'd have him do right now? Because he felt like such a coward. He should be helping his mother. He should be doing something. Maybe he should call Master Mark. But his mom had said she didn't want to call him because he was so worried about Joey right now. He sat there for what seemed forever, and the other room had become quiet. It was over. Logan rose and crossed to his bed and threw himself down. Pulling the pillow over his head, he cried himself to sleep. New scene. The meeting took place in Joey's hospital room on Thursday evening. Shelley, Bree, and Breeze sat in the only chairs available. Mark sat on the end of Joey's bed, while Jeffy sat on the side. Ricky leaned against the back wall, and Jason leaned against the door. Eric leaned against the window ledge. Jojo, Eric, and Taylor were being treated to organic pizza for dinner by Justin and Lori. It had been a week and 1 day since Joey had taken 2 bullets on the courthouse steps. A week and 1 day since Mark had promised Bella that he'd get her custody of Logan. And Joey would be out of the hospital by Sunday, and Bella would have her custody order by tomorrow. So, Joey's instincts were right on, Mark continued. Gordon had a great deal on Judge Latham. Like what? Shelley asked. Well, Joey thought it was strange that Latham lived in a small house in Linwood. Jeff found that he actually was living with a young woman named Shanda Gold. Young? How young? Bree asked. She's 18. Bree frowned. Well, certainly old enough then. Mark nodded. So it would seem, but there's much more to it. I finally convinced Latham's ex-wife to speak with me, and she told me they'd been divorced for 2 years, and she got everything. The house, 2 of 3 cars, and custody of the kids who are now 13, 15, and 16. So he was having an affair, and so she had leverage, Breeze asked. Oh, yes, but it's even worse. He was having an affair with a 15-year-old girl. Did he know she was underage? Well, since she was brought before him in his court as a truant, I'd say the answer is yes. Apparently, so his ex-wife says, he took one look at her and fell head over heels. He went a little crazy. He put everything he had in jeopardy just to be with this child. So he gave his wife everything in the divorce to keep her quiet. So the wife knew he was breaking the law and she didn't turn him in. That was the deal. Well, she's no better than him. She sold out on a young girl for the price of a fancy home and some cars, Shelley said with disgust. And this girl is the same woman he's living with, Joey asked. Yes. He moved to a small house in a neighborhood where he thought he'd be able to go unnoticed. And he has for 3 years. But then Gordon Landau found out about the good judge and has used that knowledge to get Latham to do his bidding. Good work, Jason said. It was mostly Joey and Jeff, Mark stated. So Judge Hovan will be presented with this information first thing in the morning. I already have an appointment to meet with him in chambers. Latham's order of custody will be rescinded, and I'm guessing he'll be disciplined. And I'll take the new custody order straight to Bella and get her and Logan out of there. Thank God, Breeze uttered, her eyes moist. Has anyone spoken to Bella lately? Bree asked. I called her earlier today, but she said she was very busy and couldn't talk, Mark said. She sounded strange. It makes me nervous. I called her too, Breeze added. She sounded pretty down. Thank goodness she'll be out of there tomorrow. Where will she go? Shelley asked. All eyes turned to Mark. Well, I think it would be best for her to get her feet under her for a while instead of rushing into anything else. Besides, it would look bad for her to leave Gordon and come to my house to stay. I think she should stay with Breeze for a while and get used to being single. Well, you just proved that your feelings for her are genuine, Breeze said. I'm so glad she has you in her life. Mark smiled. I'm glad I meet with your approval. Well, I got a problem with him staying at Breeze's house, Joey said, surprising everyone. New scene. He pounded on her bedroom door. Go away, Bella said. I'm not well. Bella, you'd better open this door right now. She sat on the floor in the far corner of the room where she'd been sitting all day, except for the times she'd been in the bathroom puking up her guts. Logan had come straight in from school to check on her, and she'd convinced him that she had a virus and told him to go play ball. Reluctantly, he'd obeyed. Of course, she didn't have a virus. Her body was reacting to the images that had been running through her brain all day, images of what Gordon had done to her last night. I swear, Bella, if you don't open this door, I'm going to break it down. I'm sick, Gordon. Leave me alone, please, she added with just the right amount of humility. All became quiet, and she breathed a sigh of relief. He'd given up, thank goodness. He'll have to fend for himself for his dinner tonight. She looked around the room where she'd imprisoned herself. Life had become a true nightmare. She closed her eyes. Mark, You're all I have left, she thought. You're my only hope. Please come and get me. Then she realized she was being a wimp, sitting around waiting for Mark to rescue her, waiting to see what kind of mood Gordon is in each day, playing roulette with her and Logan's lives. She couldn't sit around and wait anymore. She had to take action. She told Gordon she'd never take Logan and try to make a run for it, but that was before he drug her up to his room and raped her over and over. Her stomach heaved as the memories came again. Startled, she gasped at the large bang on the door. It sounded like he kicked it. Thankfully, the door held. Good. He can't get in. Bella, you open this door right now, he screamed. She shuddered. He was really mad now. He must have hurt his foot trying to kick it in. Another large bang, and another, and something cracked. Bella stood and held her breath. There was nowhere for her to run. She could hide in the closet or under the bed or in the bathtub, but he'd find her. 2 more kicks, another loud cracking sound, and then the door came crashing in. He stood, breathing hard in the threshold. His eyes glittered with rage as he looked at her. Go away, Gordon, she said again. I'm sick. I'm not going away, Bella. You're going to pay for locking me out. It's my room, not yours. It's my house. It's mine, too, and let me remind you that my parents helped us to get it, she threw back. You little, he said as he came forward. He grabbed her by the arm. Come on, let's go. She pulled back, struggling against him. Where are you taking me? We're going to have some more fun. I can't get last night out of my head. No, she screamed at him and finally jerked away. It's not going to happen. Do you think you're going to just come home every day now and have your way with me? Use me like some blow-up doll? He reached for her. Don't touch me, she said as she dodged him. He eyed her slowly. You know what, Bella? What? She spat. I think you've been lying to me. I don't know what you're talking about, she said nervously. I think you do. She closed her eyes briefly and shook her head. Please, Gordon, leave me alone. I don't feel well. You're not a very good liar, Bella. I'm not lying, she yelled with frustration. Well, maybe not about the being sick part, but you are about you and your boyfriend. You've been different, Bella. I've been thinking a lot about this. You've been different ever since I went away for the weekend. You know what I think, Bella? I think while I was away taking care of business, you met up with your little kung fu master. Taking care of business? You were off for the weekend with that woman from the club. So you don't deny it, Gordon said, his jaw clenching in rage. New scene. I agree with Joey, Jason said. I don't think they should stay with Breeze either. At this point, I think it's safe to say that Gordon may not be too stable. He's obviously capable of violence, and he was bold enough or stupid enough to try to get into Joey's room last week. I wouldn't put it past him to try to get to Bella or Logan or even hiring someone else to do his dirty work. Joey could stay at Breeze's house once he gets out of the hospital, but he's not up to par yet, much less back to his superhero self. Mark grinned at Joey, who only shook his head. We could place an agent there, Shelley suggested. Eric nodded. We could, or they can just come stay with us. Shelley and Jeffy both clapped their hands together. Oh, yes, Shelley said, that would be perfect. It would be fantastic, Jeffy agreed. They'd be perfectly safe at our house. You'd still have to up your security level, Jason said. Eric nodded. We'll up it all the way to red if you think that's what we need. Well, at least orange, Jason advised. Done. Oh, wonderful, Jeffy said. She glanced at Mark. Is that okay with you? It's great with me. Then what's wrong? I don't know. I'm just anxious, I guess. He turned to Breeze. What about you? As long as they're safe, that's all that matters. Is there any other family business, news, announcements anyone wants to share before we go our separate ways? Several people tried to speak and then stopped and then laughed. Joey, you go first, Eric said. I was just going to point out that the Keno Challenge is in 6 weeks, and I obviously won't be participating this year, so we're going to need to get someone to take my place. And I nominate 2 people, Mark and Jeffy. You mean Jeff, Shelley corrected. No, I mean Jeffy. Jeffy grinned. I'm interested. Please explain. Joey shrugged. First, about Mark. I think he's the logical choice to replace me. Mark shook his head. I don't have the killer instinct you have, Joey. If you're saying it's not for you, I understand, and so be it. But if you're just too lazy to accept the challenge, then I got a problem with that. I have a lot going on right now, and training for the challenge would be a huge undertaking. It would be a huge outlet, Ricky added. Everyone turned to listen to Ricky. Remember the first challenge? What was going on? Training for the challenge not only helped relieve my stress, but it helped the entire family to focus on something challenging. He shrugged. We're all used to Joey winning. It would be great to focus on helping you to win. Mark smiled. And what if I don't win? Don't. And what if I don't? Don't what? Don't compete or don't win? What if I don't win? Man, Mark, listen to yourself. That doesn't sound like you at all. What happened to your competitive edge? I know you used to have one, Ricky said. Well, it was certainly there a few weeks ago when he joined me in the ring, Joey added. Then again, maybe Mark considers himself in the I'm a lover, not a fighter category. Mark sighed. Okay, you guys, you want me to fight in the challenge? Then I will. But training will have to take place on nights and weekends. Awesome, Joey said. I already feel more focused. Mark looked up. Okay, well, I know you all want to get in on this, but you can't all train me. Eric, I appoint you head trainer. You give everyone else their assignments. I, he said as he stood and bowed, am your puppet and your honored student. Woohoo, Shelley said. Now what about me, Joey? What did you have in mind? He smiled at his sister. I was thinking, we have a female Mart champion as a mom and a fabulous martial artist trained by the legendary Grandmaster Kino as a sister. Why haven't we had a female division in the Kino Challenge? Good question, Shelley said with a nod. Oh, this would be so cool, Jeffy said with glee. I'm sure there would be no shortage of women who would like to climb into that ring with Jeffy, Joey continued. Last year's Mart champion for one, Shelley said, and the runner-up. As a matter of fact, I can think of 5 or 6 names right off the bat. Well, if she fights, I don't want her taking on more than 2 opponents, Eric said firmly. I agree, Joey, Mark, Ricky, and Jason all said at the same time. Jeffy folded her arms with a pout. Fine. So we have our work cut out for us, Eric said, his eyes glowing with excitement and pride. Shelley smiled up at him. He was now in his element. Jason glanced at his watch. Well, who else had something to discuss? Ricky, didn't you start to say something? I was going to let everyone know that Bree just signed on to do a movie, Ricky offered. Really? What's it about? Shelley asked. I will be playing a scientist/doctor who is on the verge of discovering the cure for cancer, which makes me a target. Jeffy clapped her hands together. That's so awesome, Bree. That's exactly what I'm going to do, except I'm going to do it in real life. I totally believe that, Jeffy, Bree said. Go ahead, Ricky prodded. Tell them who's playing the hero in the film. Bree smiled slyly. It's Dayton Hemingway. Woohoo, Bree said. Feeling a little threatened, are you, Rick? Joey laughed. Not even slightly. I don't know, Mark said. I've heard Hemingway has a knack for falling in love with his leading ladies. And I would expect no less working opposite Bree. It's will Bree fall in love with him? And I've already threatened them both, so we're good. Everyone laughed. New scene. Why should I deny it? Bella returned. You keep calling him my boyfriend no matter what I say. You're going to believe what you want anyway. Why should I waste my breath? He moved closer and grasped her upper arms firmly. Bella looked up at him defiantly. Let me go. Tell me, Bella, what was it like, huh? What was it like to be with another man? Gordon, stop. Let go. You're hurting me. His jaw clenched. No. You're coming with me. He jerked her forward. No, she screamed. I won't go with you. You're not doing that to me again. She let her body go limp and fell to the floor. He stopped and bent over her. I'll drag you if I have to. He tried to grab her by the hands, but she started swinging with all her might. He dodged her fists and moved to simply pick her up, but she swung around and kicked over and over as if she were in a swimming pool. She realized she looked like a child throwing a fit, but she didn't care. She kicked and hit and tried to crawl away, but he grabbed her by the hair. Bella groaned in pain as he used her hair to lift her to her feet. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her kicking and screaming out of her bedroom, down the hall, and into his room. He let go to shove her toward the bed, but she caught herself and backed away from the bed and from him. A few more steps back and she'd be at her dresser, she thought, and then if she could edge to the right, she could make it through the doorway. She could run down the stairs and through the dining room and pull chairs down to block him, and maybe that would give her just enough time to get out the back door and get to a neighbor's house. He stood there, a sick smile on his face, watching her back away from him. "Oh, yeah," he said with a sneer. "You've been lying. Did you like it, Bella? Admit it. Just admit it. You've been with him. How did he talk to you? How did he talk you into his bed, huh? Did he tell you he loved you? How did he get you to commit adultery? Because that's what you did, Bella. You committed adultery. Do you think the courts would ever give you custody after what you've done?" "You committed adultery. You!" she yelled. He stepped closer. "Did he come here or did you go to him?" She shook her head as the tears coursed down her cheeks. "No, no, Gordon, I didn't." "Then you went to him? You met him somewhere or you went to his house? Did you take my son with you?" She shook her head. "No, Gordon, you're wrong." "I don't think so. You're lying to me, Bella, and I'm going to get the truth out of you. I know you've been with Mark Adams. I know you've committed adultery. I just want to know where and how. Where, Bella? Was it at a hotel, or were you a little more discreet than that? Was it at his house? Did you take my son to his house and then go into the bedroom?" She shook her head. "No, Gordon. No, you didn't go into the bedroom, or no, you didn't take my son. I didn't take Logan." Gordon felt as if his head was going to explode. So she did exactly what he suspected. She was going to pay for it. "You didn't take Logan, but you did commit adultery, didn't you?" he hollered. "You did." "Okay, yes, I did," she screamed back at him. "I did. I made love with Mark Adams. I made love, something you will never understand. And you know what, Gordon? I had no idea it could be that good. It was nothing like when you grunt and ease yourself on me. He's a real man. He's everything a man should be, which means he's nothing like you. You could never measure up to him, not as far as honor and strength, and definitely not in inches. It was good, Gordon, so good, and I can't wait to do it again," she screamed. He screamed profanities at her just before he backhanded her, and Bella flew several feet before she landed on the soft white carpet. She got to her knees and tried to crawl toward the door, but Gordon lifted her by the hair and drew back his fist and punched. She crashed back against her dresser, knocking over perfume bottles and a crystal vase, and she fell to the floor in a heap. New scene. "Okay, well, Justin and the boys will be back any time now, so is there any other business?" Eric asked. "JoJo has a game next Thursday at 5 if anyone wants to come," Mark said. "We'll be there," Shelley assured him. "That reminds me, Eric made the academic team at school," Ricky offered. "Awesome," Jeffy said. "Well, tell him we're very proud of him," Eric said. "By the way, how is he feeling?" Jeffy asked. "No more headaches?" "No, he's feeling pretty good." "Oh, guess who's going to sing at the Keno Challenge next month?" Shelley asked. "Carrie Underwood?" Joey ventured. Shelley laughed. "No, but just as good. Our own Lizzie Tanner." "Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see them again," Jeffy said. "Do you think the whole crew will come?" "More than likely," Shelley answered. "Your father is in love with those little girls." "They're not so little anymore," Jason put in. "Heather is what, 16? "She's 15, Shelley corrected. "Wow, that's the age I was when I went to Seattle and tried to—" Jeffy stopped and looked around at the comical expressions on everyone's face, and she blushed. Well, you know." Eric rolled his eyes. "Yes, we know." "We just wanted to see if you were actually going to say it," Bree said. "I guess I still need to work on that little problem I have with saying too much," Jeffy said with a laugh. "I guess you do," Mark said. He stood as his phone began to vibrate. He pulled it from his pocket and glanced at the caller ID and held his hand up for silence and put it on speaker. "Bella?" She sniffed loudly. "Mark, I—" He waited, but she didn't go on. "Bella, what's happened? Are you okay?" She sniffed again. "Mark," she whispered, "I need you." "I'm on my way. Can you tell me what's happened? Did Gordon hurt you? Is he still there?" Bree stood and gathered her purse. "Bella," Mark said as he moved toward the door. "He's dead." Mark stopped in his tracks and turned to face his family. "What? What did you say?" He's dead, Mark. I killed him. Okay. Okay, how? How did you kill him? I shot him. Are you sure he's dead? No. I called 911 and they're on the way, and I told them what I did. Mark blew out a breath. Her voice was so distant as if she were in a trance. Bella, listen to me. Don't say anything to anyone else. Do you hear me? Yes, she said quietly. It was self-defense. Say that back to me. What did I just say? It was self-defense, she mimicked. Good. I'm on my way. Hold tight. He ended the call and looked up at the shocked faces. Jason, I'm going to need your pull with the police department. Jason nodded. I'm right behind you. And call Justin for me and tell him I'm over my head. I'll have him with me. Now go. Mark nodded and started out. Wait, Mark. I'm coming too. I'll follow you, Bree said. He nodded. Let's go. New scene. It seemed to take forever to get to the Landau home. By the time they did, the place was surrounded by police and bystanders. An ambulance and a blue and white coroner's van were in the driveway, neither yet occupied. Mark and Breeze rushed toward the porch steps, but were stopped. Sorry, you can't go in, an officer said. I'm her sister, Breeze said. Sorry, ma'am. Well, I'm her lawyer, Mark offered. The officer spoke into his mic, then nodded at Mark. Go ahead. They're in the front room. Mark moved quickly up the steps and into the house. He looked to the left. Bella sat on the sofa, her face bloody, her hair in disarray, her clothes torn. A man knelt in front of her, talking to her, and when Mark approached, the man stood and held out his hand. I'm Detective Mooney. You're her lawyer? Yes, Mark said as he shook hands. Mark Adams. Well, Mr. Adams, let me just say, before you get all bent out of shape, that it looks like a clear case of self-defense. Mark blew out a breath and nodded. He put her in the hospital a little over a week ago. Yeah, we have record of that. And one of the officers here tonight was here that night, too. Mark knelt down and looked her over. Her eyes were blank. Her throat had bruises. There were claw marks on her chest. Her shirt had been torn from her body and was hanging on by the sleeves. Mark took off his jacket and placed it around Bella's shoulders. How you doing? She began to cry. I'm sorry. He wouldn't stop. I thought he was going to kill me, and then I remembered the gun, the one Breeze gave me. Where was the gun? Detective Mooney asked. I'm going to need some time to confer with my client, Mark said. The head of my law firm should be here soon. His name is Justin Lee. Please have the officer outside. Allow him entrance. Sighing, the detective nodded, turned, and left the room. Mark pulled a chair up in front of Bella and sat. He looked into her eyes. Bella, look at me. Focus on what I'm saying. She blinked and made eye contact. It's probably best that you not mention that you and I have a relationship other than attorney-client. Do you understand? She nodded. Speak, Bella. Yes or no, do you understand? Yes, she said softly. I want to hold you, Bella. I want to comfort you, but I think it's best that I keep my distance. Okay, sweetie? She nodded. I want you to tell me and Justin what happened, but first I'm going to get a paramedic in here to take a look at you. I'm okay. I already told them that. Well, you don't look okay, and you're in shock. But even if you are okay, I'm going to have them examine you anyway because I'd need to waste time until Jason and Justin get here. Oh, all right. Mark stood and found Detective Mooney. I haven't been able to talk to her yet. She appears to be in shock. I want to have a paramedic take a look at her first to make sure she doesn't pass out on me. Fine. The detective motioned to an officer. Send one of the paramedics in here to see Ms. Landau. He looked back at Mark. I'll be upstairs when she's ready to talk. Thank you. They both looked up to see two men coming down the steps carrying a stretcher. On the stretcher was a body draped by a sheet. Both the body and the sheet were snug under web strapping. Mark tried not to let it get to him. This was Gordon, a man Mark said he'd like to kill, and now the man really was dead, but it had been sweet, passive Bella who'd done the killing. Mark shook his head to clear it. You knew him? Detective Mooney asked. Mark nodded. He's a criminal defense attorney. We don't really run in the same circles, but I've seen him in court and at a few social events. How did you become Ms. Landau's attorney, if you don't mind my asking? Well, I teach martial arts at the Keno studio over on Brookshire. She brought her son Logan in to sign up about 2 years ago. Mom? Mom? Speaking of Logan, Mark said. They looked out. An officer was trying to keep Logan from coming in. Let him in, Detective Mooney said. Mom, Logan said as he ran up the steps. Mark stopped him. Where's Mom? Is she okay? Mom! She's okay, Logan. Calm down now, Mark said as he bent down. Some bad things have happened. Mom's okay? He asked again. Yes, your mom's going to be fine. But your father, Mark paused and looked up at the detective before he continued. Your father is dead. Logan blinked. Dead? Mark nodded. Logan leaned against Mark and turned his face against his chest and quickly looked back up. Can I see my mom? Mark nodded. She's in there. He watched as Logan ran toward the sofa where Bella sat. A paramedic was taking her blood pressure, but Bella held her arms out and gathered her son to her. They held each other and they cried together, and she pulled him back to look at his face and brushed his tears aside. Everything's going to be okay, she said softly. She brushed at his shirt. Look now, I've gotten blood on you. It's okay, Mom. He hugged her again. Master Mark says Dad is dead. She nodded. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Logan. Mark looked back over his shoulder. Detective Mooney nodded. I'll be upstairs. A few minutes later, Jason and Justin arrived, and they were allowed in. The paramedic was just finishing up with Bella. They'd placed a bandage on a small cut just above her right eyebrow. She held an ice pack to her nose, which was still trickling blood. Justin sat on the chair that Mark had pulled up in front of Bella. Logan, why don't you come with me? Your Aunt Breeze is outside, Mark said. Logan followed Mark outside, and Breeze was sitting on the steps, and Logan sat down beside her, and she put her arms around him, and Mark went back inside. Bella, Justin said, I'm Justin Lee. I met you at the belt party a few weeks ago. She nodded. I remember you. You're Jason's brother. He smiled. Right. I'm also the senior partner at Mark's law firm, and I want you to tell me what happened. She swallowed hard. It's all such a blur. Can you try? She nodded. He came home. He was mad because I'd locked myself in my room. Why? Why? She asked. Why had you locked yourself in your room? Oh, she sighed heavily. Because, she glanced at Mark, because of the night before, Gordon, he did things to me. Justin took her hand and patted it. I know this is hard, Bella, but you have to tell me everything. It's important. What did he do to you? He hurt me. She shook her head as the tears coursed down her cheeks. He raped me over and over. Mark shook his head. She looked up at him, the shame in her eyes. I tried to fight him, but he was too strong. Justin drew her attention back. Was Logan home? She nodded. Okay. So this evening you were in your room? Yes, I'd been sick, throwing up all day. He was angry and finally broke the door down. He intended to do it again. Do what again? The same things he'd done the night before. Justin cleared his throat. He broke the door down. Then what? He drugged me into his bedroom, and we fought, and he choked me, and he slapped me around, and I fell against the dresser, and I was on the floor, and I thought I was probably going to die this time, and then suddenly I remembered the gun. Breeze gave me a gun a few weeks ago. We know we have that on video, Jason said. She looked up at him as if she just realized he was there. I'd put it in my bottom drawer, under my jeans. I never intended to use it, but once I remembered it was there, it seemed my only way to survive. I opened the drawer and pulled it out. I remember looking at it, trying to remember what Breeze had showed me about the safety. You didn't have to load it? No. Breeze said it wasn't any good if it wasn't loaded. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I guess somehow I got the safety off. I turned around and Gordon saw the gun and backed away. I remember thinking, good, I won't actually have to fire it. He'll leave me alone now. But then he started laughing and he came at me again. She stopped and closed her eyes. Go ahead, Bella, Justin said softly. He said, you won't shoot me. You're too pathetic. She shrugged, and so I fired. And where did it hit him? It didn't. I missed him completely. I think I hit the wall behind him. He looked back behind him like he was looking for where the bullet went, and then he turned back toward me, and he was really mad that I'd actually fired the gun, and he came at me. I fired again and hit him in the arm. I thought maybe he would stop then, but he was madder than ever, and he continued toward me, and I fired again. Her voice trailed off as she remembered the scene. And you hit him that time? She nodded. It looked like I hit him in the stomach. He fell down, and I was afraid to move. I was afraid that somehow he was going to stand back up and get me. But then his eyes closed, and I realized I needed to call 911, but I was afraid to step past him to get to the phone behind him on the nightstand, so I went back to the room where I'd been staying and found my cell phone, and I called 911 and told them that I think I just killed my husband. Do you remember what else you said to them? Jason asked. I was crying, and I know I told them that I thought he was going to kill me. I told them I was sorry, but I didn't know what else to do. And they wanted me to take his pulse and see if he was still alive. But I told them I couldn't. I told them I was afraid. Justin nodded. Good. Proof she was afraid for her life. And then I hung up and called Mark. Justin nodded and turned to Jason. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Jason nodded. I think we have problems. Detective Mooney told me it looks like a clear case of self-defense, Mark offered. Yeah, but don't think that he's not watching carefully. He said that so you would let your guard down, Jason said. Let me give you a scenario. First, it would be easy to find out that you and Bella are an item. Too many people know. So the clever criminal defense attorney, that's you, and the pitiful abused wife, that's Bella, are an item and want to be together. But the mean, nasty husband has custody of the kid. What must be done to produce a happily ever after? Well, the husband must be gotten rid of. What can we do? Well, simply, it would be easy to provoke the husband into another fight. The gun has already been planted. How easy to make it look like self-defense. All speculation, Mark said. There's no proof of that. And everyone also knows I was about to have the custody order overturned. I even already have an appointment with Judge Hovan. Yes, and thank goodness for that. Still, there's the celebrity thing. The celebrity thing? The boyfriend is none other than Ricky Keno's and Brianna Adams' brother. Now it's getting juicy. You know how tempting it is to arrest a celebrity. I am not a celebrity. Close enough. Ricky, Bree, and don't forget Joey, now your brother, being gunned down a week ago, could help or hurt, Jason said. Frustrated, Mark raised his hand. So what do you want to do? Justin nodded at Jason before he spoke. I want us to be completely upfront. I'm going to go upstairs and talk to the DIC and let him in on our complete investigation from the beginning. And keep your fingers crossed we might be able to avoid a scene like we went through with Ricky all those years ago. Mark nodded. Many years ago, when Bree had been shot, cops had shown up at the hospital to arrest Ricky. It had been a disturbing sight, to say the least, and that charge had been felony assault. This one would be murder for Bella and accessory to murder for him. Jason and Justin walked upstairs together to find Detective Mooney. Mark stayed with Bella, and she blinked at him, and he took her hand. He had so much he wanted to say, but it was definitely not the time or place. I'm so tired, she said softly. I'm sure. You're still going to have to tell the story to the detective, so hold tough for just a little longer. Can you do that? She nodded. Where's Logan? He's with Breeze out on the porch. I'll go get them. A few seconds later, both Logan and Breeze came through the door. Mark watched, wishing with all his might that he could put his arms around Bella and comfort her. Since he couldn't, he was glad Breeze and Logan were there. And that is the end of chapter 14.